Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to another episode of the Steelers Q&A. My name is Jeremy Betts, joining you as always here. It is a Saturday morning. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Happy to have you here if you're watching live. If you are catching this later, welcome in, and glad you can listen to it later. We're going to have some questions answered and also just talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. It's been a crazy week for me here at the Betts house, and you might hear some lively house in the background. My wife and daughter are up and at it, just like I am, and just like you are. But I just had a surgery this week, so if I'm a little squirmy today, it's because I'm just a little uncomfortable. But I'm glad to be here and going to chat with all of you today. Looks like we've got some of the regulars already in. Afton, Jared Evil, Claude Bishop, thanks for joining. Go ahead and get those questions in there and we can talk and answer those. And it's just going to be me today joining with you guys. It's hard to find a partner for this early morning on a Saturday. So we're going to just roll with it though and try to make the best of it. And in the process, we're going to talk Pittsburgh Steelers football. And man, good grief. Do we need to see a complete performance out of this team in week 3 against the Raiders in order to get some of the disdain out of our mouths, I guess, from just 2 weeks now of putrid offensive performances and one defensive performance that we can be excited about, but there were still some issues in that regard as well. So, hey, you know what? It's early season for everyone, but the Steelers have some offensive struggles specifically that they're going to need to get right. And a Raiders team that has some struggles of their own might just be the get right medicine that the Steelers need after playing 2 really tough defenses and 2 really hard-hitting teams in back-to-back weeks. The Raiders do not come across in that style. They have some good players on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball, but still, you're looking at a team that under coach Josh McDaniels has not lived up to some expectations that they were hoping that they were going to have. And, being a potential playoff team, vying for superiority in their division as well. And definitely high, lofty goals for that team with the teams that are in that division. But I think we're seeing it play out in a way that they're not extremely excited about. And I think that the Steelers fans could be saying the same thing. So let's jump in. We'll get to the first question. Afton, always good for good questions here. Throwing in the first one, is the O-line's performance caused by player mistakes, play design, or something else? This is a fantastic question because I think the offensive line struggles come down to basically a bunch of different things like you're kind of laying out here. And my biggest question about the offensive line is, are Matt Canada and company making it easy on this unit to go through their assignments and to block for a running game that has just been non-existent to start out the season? And I know that they've had some issues in pass blocking as well. And but I think Kenny Pickett also hasn't helped in that regard too, holding on to the football and missing some of the open receivers that have been there. So it kind of plays all together. But if I had to just pick one thing, it would be the scheme. And I think that the scheme is probably going to be a theme of this show and others this week as we prep for the Raiders and see if the offense can really take a jump forward. And I just think Afton, you bring up a great point here, and I'll show this one too, that it certainly doesn't help that the opposing team knows exactly when we're going to run. That's exactly right. And I was reading a stat earlier. It's like the Steelers run the football from under center 80% of the time and then pass it from the shotgun 90% of the time. And that's just not conducive to giving your offense a chance in the take them by surprise department, because teams just know what's coming. And I think that the scheme is having a lot to do with the Steelers' offensive line struggles so far this year. I'll bring this up from Claude Bishop, says they don't seem strong enough. I think that like I said, when you have a scheme that forces you to make early contact and then get off the ball and move on to the second level, which is what Pat Meyer's run block scheme really asks them to do, then you've got to have the ability to push through the play and be strong. And it's not happening. And you're right, Claude. It seems like that they're overmatched sometimes. And again, two really good defensive lines in back-to-back weeks, but that's no excuse. You need to be able to hold up against these teams and be able to protect your quarterback and block for your running back. The Steelers should have a little bit easier going this week, and it needs to be a week that gets them rolling as far as getting the running game going. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, these two guys, they have to get going for this offense to be what we were hoping it could be this season with Kenny Pickett under center. It's just not going to be an explosive offense if the running game cannot contribute. So we will see how it goes. Got another question here from Mike Bogush. Do you anticipate the division of labor between Najee and Jaylen changing this week? If the coaches are smart, yes. I mean, that is a question that I just don't understand why in the second half of last week, once you've seen the explosiveness of Jaylen Warren and the lack of explosion from Najee Harris. And I'm not saying Najee Harris can't provide you something at running back, but he's really more of the closer, if you will. Jaylen Warren needs to be more of the feature early in games to get the team going, to get the offense moving up and down the football field. So I think that if the coaches are smart, if they're really intent on this team reaching its maximum potential on the offensive side of the football, then you've got to give Jaylen Warren more run early in the football game. You just have to do it. And I know the stats were misleading from last week. Najee Harris had a better yards per carry average, more explosive plays, but he had 10 runs last week for 42 yards, something along those lines, 43 yards. Half of them came on a 21-yard run, and basically the other half came on an 18-yard run. So you're looking at 8 more runs for like 4 or 5 yards, and that's just not conducive to a good offense. And it means Kenny Pickett's having to do too much. It means the offensive line is having to do too much when defenses can just pin their ears back on 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 12 and just go after Kenny Pickett. So that to me is a huge deal, and the Steelers need to be very smart. Upper management, coaching needs to be very smart in how they handle the situation. Obviously, you don't want to estrange Najee Harris. You want to make him feel like he is definitely part of this team and a player to that they'll be counting on later in the season. It's a long season yet, and the Steelers are going to need all these guys. So you don't want to make Najee feel like he's not a part of this team, which kind of goes into this second question. Do you think Najee will get a second contract? I just don't see it. I don't see that is I just don't see that is something that the Steelers need to do. And it's not really anything against Najee Harris. I mean, I like the guy. I think he's a good player. I think he plays hard, but I just don't see the value that he's bringing to your offense on a regular basis. And he has a good game here and there where he takes over and does some good things for you, but it's not consistent enough. If you're going to give a running back another contract, it needs to be a Nick Chubb type player. It needs to be a Josh Jacobs type player who the Steelers are playing this week, who has proven to be a more consistent back than Najee Harris and be able to be a little bit more explosive. And so that's kind of my considerations there. I just don't think that is something that the Steelers need to worry themselves about right now, is getting Najee Harris a second contract on this team. All right. The next question from Claude Bishop. How bad is DJ missed? I'm not going to be mean to the guy, but I don't think he's being missed that much in the offensive scheme, because I think the Steelers need to push the ball to other players more. And I think that happens when that player is missing. So Deontay Johnson is as big a player as he is for the Steelers and as good a player as he is. I think that the Steelers can benefit from him being gone for a few weeks and learn to utilize other players more appropriately. And if they can do that, then you're looking at a team that has a more well-rounded group around Kenny Pickett and can be more explosive um, because George Pickens is just more explosive. They do need to get these tight ends involved, though. Need to get Pat Fryermuth involved. And Darnell Washington needs to get involved in the passing game, too. That's a huge mismatch that you're never using. So I don't know. Claude, I like DJ just as much as anybody, maybe more. But I just think that what he does for this team is give them a crutch. And I just don't know if that's going to be good in the long run for the benefit and growth of Kenny Pickett and company in this offense. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break on the audio side for sure. I'm going to turn my screen off here for just a second while I reconfigure. Like I said, just coming off of a surgery, an abdomen surgery, so I'm a little uncomfortable. So just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. And we'll hear a word from our sponsors on the audio side. If you're listening live, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on the Steelers Q&A. All right, I'm back here on the Steelers Q&A. Appreciate your patience with me while I got resituated here. Had to actually move to the bedside because it's just a lot of pain. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me here. Thank you for joining in, and so glad that you can be a part of this. I think going back to kind of what we were talking about here about the offense and just kind of some of the issues here. We're talking about Deontay Johnson, and is he a part of this team that the Steelers need back quickly? And I just think that if you're talking about a guy who plays the game in a way that allows your offense to have some easy outs, then maybe you do miss him a little bit. But as far as giving the Steelers a chance to explore what they have in these other guys, we've already seen it pay off now with George Pickens getting 10 targets and turning that into 4 catches for 127 yards. Deontay Johnson doesn't turn 4 catches into 127 yards. And if Kenny Pickett was accurate on Monday night, then I think George Pickens has probably close to 200 yards receiving in that game and maybe 7 or 8 receptions. So it's just a play that the Steelers had to do. That they've got to throw the ball more to him, and he's got to be more of a focal point of this offense. And when DJ comes back, I'm hoping that what they've learned from his absence is that the offensive game, as far as the passing game goes, needs to go through George Pickens and not through Deontay Johnson anymore. So let's bring up this other question from Afton. What do you think of the matchups with the Raiders wide receivers and the Pittsburgh defensive backs? If Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams are both healthy, then the Steelers will have their hands full for sure. This is a good wide receiver room. Hunter Renfrow has been targeted 1 time in this passing offense, which is kind of insane to me with as effective as he was, especially on third down in recent years. But man, he is a guy that they need to get involved more. And when you talk about Devontae Adams, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the league, and he's already shown that he has a good rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo. But Jacoby Myers really is the one that sets this group apart when he is healthy and on the field, because he's a very, very solid number two that can do a lot of different things for your team. And if he if he is available and healthy and ready to rock and roll, then it could be a long day for Steelers defensive backs. Now, what I've said about the Steelers defense kind of all year long, in the or all offseason long in the lead up to the season, is that I just think that they're going to give up some yards through the air specifically. And there's going to be some pass plays that get downfield for opposing teams. And the Steelers defense is built to kind of shut down in the red zone and really just tighten up when the field gets shorter. So they might give up some yards to this wide receiver group, and that's okay. I think that keeping the scoring down is what's going to be the biggest deal moving forward. So let's see here, trying to find some more questions. Here's a good one from Afton. Again, how many times do you think we get to the red zone this week? It needs to be a lot. But I was going to say 4 or 5 times would be awesome. Obviously, you're going to need to score points against the Raiders team because they're going to score some points. So you've got to be good in that regard. And they need to be in the red zone a lot. They just really do. That's the bottom line to it. Here's a question from Alex Mahoney. Does the Steelers offensive line have second level blocking assignments? Linebackers are running free. I think they do. They're just not getting there. And they're getting kind of locked up at the first level, which is not good. This is a team that needs to get to the second level to help out their running backs, especially Najee Harris, because he's a little slower getting to the hole. So you've got to be able to set up those first level blocking and then get to the second level and help him out a little bit. So in kind of regards to this, how well do you think the O-line will hold up against the Raiders? I think it'll do better. I think you're going to see it be a little bit better and a little more improved because, yeah, they've got Max Crosby. They've got some speed on the edge in Mad Max out there, but nothing else really scares you about this defensive front for the Raiders. So the linebackers either. You've got Robert Spillane there. The Steelers know him well. They should be able to attack him and this Raiders defense pretty regularly in all directions. I think they need to really utilize the quick game across the middle to take advantage of some of the Raiders' potential deficiencies out there. So it's got to work out for the Steelers to be a little bit better against a defensive line that's just not as good as the last two they've faced. So, and if there aren't improvements, visible improvements in this offensive line this week, then I think you've got to be very concerned as a Steelers fan. All right. So let me pull this up from Jack Myhoff. Saw a video on NFL Live this morning of Matt Canada being asked if he heard Fire Canada chants. He said they still trust the players. Like what? Ryan Clark went off on him. Ryan Clark did go off on Matt Canada, and it was a funny watch there. Canada's under a lot of fire, and for good reason. His schemes make things hard on players because they're so simple. But there are some receivers open in this offense, and Kenny Pickett's been missing them. So there's some blame to go around kind of on all fronts here. And if Matt Canada can't complicate this enough for opposing defenses to where they can't just cue in on any one thing and make the team one-dimensional, and even in that one dimension know exactly what they're doing so as to make them zero-dimensional, which is kind of what we've seen. You know, if Matt Canada can't improve that, then I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to improve either. Everything's just so hard for this offense right now. And I was mentioning last week that sometimes the Steelers, when you watch them play offense, nothing is easy for them. You watch every other offense in the league basically, and it's like there's always one thing that they can go back to, whether it's the short passing game for some teams, whether it's the run game, whether it's kind of some backyard ball for Patrick Mahomes and company. It's always something that they can go back to and rely on. And the Steelers don't have that. And that's an issue. So definitely going to play into this factor. So let's see here. I've got thanks, Mean Joe. I think Kenny shows up and balls out this week. Man, I really hope so. They're going to need him to, and it's going to be just super important for him to settle down and make plays and just get the ball to his playmakers. That's what he hasn't been able to do to this point with consistency. He's been scattershot. He needs to just settle down, trust that the guys are going to be there. I think that's a lot of the problem. He just doesn't trust that guys are going to be there when they're supposed to be, where they're supposed to be, because the offensive system is lacking. And so that's playing into it, but he's got to trust a little bit more because there are some receivers open here in this offense. There are some things that can get done with this team. So that's definitely going to play into it here. Kenny Pickett, to me, is the X factor this week. He's got to show up like we just talked about. He's got to be on point, poised in the pocket. No giving the Raiders a free possession on an errant throw or just a terrible read, which is what we've seen in 2 games now, giving the opposing team extra possessions on bad reads. That can't happen anymore. So let's get to a couple more questions here, and then I'm going to have to sign off a little early today just because of my physical shape. I don't want to keep you guys here staring at me laying in bed. I apologize for that. But wanted to get you the show if we could. So, Afton, do you think Harvin will play like he did against the Browns or more like he did against the Niners? He's got to play more like he did against the Browns. You got to win that field position battle. Presley Harvin impressed me last week, and I was very excited about that. So let's see if he can keep that up for sure. Then Alex Mahoney, do you think Pickens' inaccuracy is due to added weight gain, muscle strength? I don't think so. I think it's anticipation and players not being where they're supposed to be, like I was mentioning earlier, the scheme not being conducive to making things easy for him. So, man, I just don't think that he's gonna have to worry about that because of muscle gain over the offseason. If anything, that helps his durability, but you can maintain flexibility while you put on weight and muscle. So that's exactly what has happened, I think. I don't think that plays into it at all here. This is all about the offensive structure and if the team can get it going. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I am so sorry for a short show, but I'm going to have to get out of here and try to get comfortable and to see if I can't come back strong over the weekend and get you guys more content. Let's go Steelers. Let's win this game against the Raiders. First time in Allegiant Stadium for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're a Steelers fan and you are in the Vegas area, get out to this game and support the team. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tickets are expensive out there. I know that. I think our own Brian Anthony Davis is going to be out there for this game. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks again for joining here. That's going to do it on the Steelers Q&A. We'll talk to you guys next week.